So I just wanted to give you some tips about how to plan your 1,000-meter race. So thing to think about a 1,000-meter race is, in a lot of ways, it's a sprint, but it's also not quite a sprint. So that sets a bit of a challenge of how do you, as Ken would say, get out in front and just stay in front. But how do you do that, but also plan for when things could go wrong, or also how to pace yourself still within that sprint. So the first point really, so I'll probably talk about it in short, and then we can go into a few points in detail. So in short, it is a sprint. You do need to get out fast. You do need to really focus on moving fast for that first 30 strokes. And there really isn't that much opportunity to pace yourself. So that's the short version. The longer version is you need to have a plan for that 1,000 meters. It's not just about how you might pace yourself. It's also about how you keep yourself focused. You know, we've all had that feeling of getting to 500 meter mark, being short of breath, lactic acid building up. And then it's that at that point where if you don't have a plan and things almost get you thinking outside of your boat, outside of what you're doing, then you can really fall in a bit of hole. You can feel a lot worse than you really are, and it can really take away from your performance. So it's important to step out the 1,000 meters so you can think about pacing yourself a little bit, to use that burst when it's most effective, but then also to give yourself the technical things to think about to keep yourself focused on rowing well. So in the long version, get out fast, first 30 strokes. The first 5 strokes is not about getting the rate up. The first 5 strokes is getting the boat moving. First 30 strokes, not being so focused on length, being focused on keeping the rate up. 30 strokes out, really needing to focus on length, because you don't want to spend the 1,000 meters at a super high rate and not moving the boat. So you first, after 30 strokes, thinking about length, settling into the length, and then there's somewhat of a strategy bit. So a lot of people will go for a sprint at the 500 meter mark. You know, they'll sit there, they'll go through the 500 meters. They think, okay, now's the time to go. So one tactic is to sprint before everyone else. So you get through the 500 meter mark and you're ahead rather than they're ahead. So at the 400 meter mark is when you need to go. So a way to focus on that is 10 hard. So that's 10 flat chat, really focusing on pressure and really focusing on moving the boat past the crew that you're trying to get in front of. And then 10 strokes hold. So they're still rowing very hard, but not so focused on moving the boat faster than the next crew. So 3 lots of those will get you from the 400 meter mark to about the 550 meter mark. So 450 to go. At that point, you want to get yourself ready for the sprint to the line. So the last 250 meters. So you have time there to really go back and think about breathing and think about boat run and technique before you start to wind up to the line. So you hit the red buoys, or you go through the red buoys, and then at that point you want to step it up. Not all in once, not trying to get the rate right up in one big jump, trying to gradually get it up. So every 8 strokes, up in rate, up in rate, up in rate, up in rate. So that's the pacing itself bit. The next bit to think about is how you use cues to have a plan which keeps you focused. And by that I mean focused on what you need to do, focused on rather than focusing on how you feel. So the good thing to think about there is what technical cues. Often they'll be the things that you're trying to work on technically for improvement. So, you know, those faults that you're trying to make sure you don't get into, bring that habit back whilst you're racing. Other times they might just be things that you can think about which are more about feeling of the boat rather than feeling of yourself. So you could have calls or thoughts to yourself, stagger them out throughout the course at the 250 meter mark, at the 500 meter mark, and then things to think about technically. It could be about boat run. It could be about keeping the shoulders down the catch and thinking about leg drive. Whatever suits you, whatever is part of your training routine really, and things you're focusing on training, bringing that into the race so you can focus on those. So it's a trick though, really. It's about getting you thinking about what you're doing rather than how you're feeling. So that's it. So that's in one sense, pretty simple. It's a sprint. In another sense, you can pace yourself tactically. And then in a third way, it's good to have things to think about in a staggered out way to keep yourself out of your head. And the thing as well about having the plan is that it helps you when things don't go to plan or don't go how you hoped. You might have a bad start. You might be alongside crews that are faster than you'd expected. So at some point, you're not where you want to be in terms of the rankings. So if you get into the fault of thinking too much about where you're placed rather than thinking more about how you're rowing, you're just going to go backwards. So there's two things, which is you need to keep your eyes in the boat, and you need to have as part of your plan, at what point will I look out of the boat, rather than just not having a plan on that, going through the race and, like everyone, being tempted to look out and then looking out all the time, rather than setting yourself a plan of like, okay, I would think tactically at the 400 meter mark is going to be the point where I look outside the boat, but it's for a purpose. It's you're looking for the crew that you're going to try and get past or get away from or catch up to within that burst, right? And then again, thinking about at the 250 meters, giving yourself the opportunity to look out again. Okay, I'm going to look out here, figure out who I'm going to try and get past in that sprint for the line. But that's it. You have the plan. Those are the times you look out. Any other time you're looking out outside of that is where you've stepped away from the plan. So plan when you're going to look out. It keeps you focused on what you're going to do rather than being focused all the way through the race on what's happening around you. So it's going to give you a better chance of being successful. So that's one aspect. When do you look out? The other aspect is how that plan that we talked about the technical cues and then giving yourself something to focus on is actually the thing that you need to bring back and bring into more focus if perhaps you have a bad start and that part of the first 30 strokes isn't part of what you'd planned, or if you get to the 400 meter mark and the place where you'd hoped to push through has lost, they're too far ahead of you. Because you don't want to be thinking about where you're ranking, you want to think about what you got to do. And so it's a bit hard sometimes to just call your attention back. But if you have a plan of what you want to think about when, then you can always come back to what's that cue that I need to be thinking about at this point of the race. What should I be trying to get my body to do as part of the stroke or the boat to do? So yeah, if you think about that, then it will keep your mind off where you want to be, where you are, where you're not, and thinking about what you've got to do.